Rusty, I actually recognize the people in the thumbnail, so I've heard of them, and this video is dumb. You hear that? That's what you sound like in the comments right now. Get over it, all right? It's just a good title. Leave me alone. It doesn't matter. I just want to talk about some young players that probably are not getting as much shine as they deserve and not as much attention on their actual potential. So that's what this video is. I understand most of you probably recognize Darius Garland, or I think it's DeAndre Hunter and Keldon Johnson in the thumbnail. It's okay. Just move on. You don't need to comment about it. Plenty of people are going to comment about it regardless, but it is what it is. Today's video is just a spotlight on some young players that I want to put a spotlight on, who I think have more upside than they've been given credit for, and a lot of people don't give them that much attention. So pretty self-explanatory. Let's just jump into it. Before I continue on with this video, about half of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed, so if you fall into that 50%, then subscribe. Also drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. Also, there is a new podcast over on the podcast channel that is going to be linked in the description and in the pinned comment below. So let's just address the guy dead center of the thumbnail, Darius Garland. Darius has really been killing it lately. His numbers in the past 10 games have been very good, and overall for the season, he's at around 16-17 points and 7 assists on pretty solid efficiency. Lately, his efficiency has been fantastic. Other times, it's not been the best. But Garland, the biggest thing about him this year that's really surprising is that his playmaking has taken a massive leap. Going into the draft, coming out of college and mostly high school, because Garland played very few college games, his playmaking was called into question, and it seemed like he was going to be a scoring guard above all and not really be much of a passer. And in his rookie year with Cleveland, that seemed very much the case because his playmaking was not all that great. But this year, he's up to around 7 assists per game, and he is making thread-the-needle passes quite significantly, quite often, and he is just a much improved passer, basically. Add on to it that his feel for the game since his rookie year has drastically improved. His rookie year, it didn't look like he belonged in the NBA because he was a small guard who did not have much control over what he was doing. And when you're a really small guard, you need to have control over what you're doing because what else are you going to provide? This year, his threes are knocked down. He's getting more floaters. He's making better decisions with the ball in his hands. Just overall, a much better all-around point guard. And a guy like this who can be one of the best shooters in the NBA, one of the better playmakers in the NBA, and find other ways to score the ball, I think at his peak, Garland can be a 20-9 type of guy on relatively good efficiency. And not a great defensive player, but that kind of guy is a star level player, and I think Darius Garland can get to that level. Gary Trent Jr. is a player I have talked about on this channel quite often. I believe Gary can be a 20-point per game scorer and multiple times in his career because he is one of the better three-point shooters in the NBA. I think offensively he can kind of be like a not as great Klay Thompson, because while he's not as good at getting open for three, he honestly doesn't seem to care. He'll still shoot the three half of the time when there's a defender right in his face, and it goes in regardless. He also has a pretty decent pull-up mid-range shot, can do a straight line drive off of a face-up and stuff like that. It's not the most diverse offensive repertoire, but I think he can be a 20-plus point per game scorer just simply off of the fact that he is a knockdown shooter. Especially in Toronto, where they're looking for talent wherever they can find it. I think over time he's going to become more and more of a focal point of the offense. Right now he's averaging about 15 points per game, but I think even by next season he's probably going to be hovering around 20. I've talked about him so much that I don't feel the need to harp on him too much, so that's that for him. DeAndre Hunter of the Atlanta Hawks over 20 games is averaging about 16 points per game, and he's doing it in a relatively impressive and efficient fashion. He is one of those guys who is not like the most highlight crazy guy, but he's just very solid and knows what he's doing. His 3-ball could be more efficient than it is. That's something that would be a big step for him, but he has a good pull-up mid-range shot. He's good at finishing at the basket. He's good at finishing plays, but also creating a little bit himself off of the dribble from time to time. Right now, he is shooting elite numbers from mid-range, though it is just 20 games sample size, so take it with a bit of a grain of salt, but I think he's going to be one of the better pull-up mid-range shooters in the league, and a decent 3-point shooter, good finisher, and a guy who can average around 20 points, but more importantly than that, he's a big forward who I think can be a very good defensive player, so that's a fantastic player for what the Hawks need, and when he gets his health and his legs under him, I think he's going to be a very, very good player. PJ Washington of the Charlotte Hornets is another player that I have given a lot of attention to. PJ is not a guy who is going to stand out right now if you watch Hornets games because he's pretty reserved. He actually averages the exact same points per game in his rookie year. He is a power forward who shoots threes and finishes layups mostly off of LaMelo passes and other players playmaking to him. He's not going to be somebody who creates all of his offense or most of his offense or probably even like 15% of his offense, but he's another guy that can finish plays. And I think at his absolute peak, he shoots like 8 threes a game, around 40%, is getting a good amount of lobs in the pick and roll, good amount of easy finishes at the basket, off of dump off passes, things like that. He can also create a little bit off of the dribble. I think he could get to around 20 points per game, and he is also a fantastic defensive player. It's kind of a similar case of DeAndre Hunter, although not as much shot creation on his part, but PJ can be a very good stretch 4 who can create off the dribble a little bit, be a good pick and roll option, and be one of the best defensive forwards in basketball. And that's a pretty damn good player. And I think a lot of the attention in Charlotte goes to LaMelo, obviously one, and then Miles Bridges because he creates highlight plays more often, but PJ Washington is going to be a very good NBA player. I've said before, I think he can be basically like Paul Millsap if Paul shot threes instead of mid-range shots at his peak. It's kind of what I think PJ can be. Isaiah Stewart's nickname is Beef Stew. Need I say more? In the games where he has gotten over 25 minutes, he has averaged 12 points and 11.5 rebounds, which is pretty solid. He shoots good at the basket. He has attempted threes and even made threes here or there. In fact, on 0.5 attempts, he shoots like 46%. Obviously, gonna need to see a lot more volume before I say that's a real thing for him, but he has a very good looking form, and I think at the bare minimum, he's gonna be a guy who, as a starter, shoots like 2 threes a game on not horrible efficiency. So a guy who can at least stretch the floor from mid-range, and then he's a good finisher, and even though he is an undersized center, he has a very good knack for creating space around the basket, little pump fakes, little fake hooks and things like that. He just has a good ability to create space under the basket. There was one game the other day that I was watching where he had like 18 points, including ending with a 3-pointer. He was just very good at getting the ball down low, doing a pump fake, going up and under, things like that. Then, defensively, while he is a little bit undersized, he is very good at throwing his weight around because he is a bigger guy for his size, and he just has good defensive instincts, and even though he is a little heavier, he is pretty damn nimble, so he can be versatile defensively, finish at the basket well, hopefully be a decent 3-point shooter, be a very good rebounder, and his nickname is Beef Stew. I don't know what else to tell you. Isaiah Stewart is one of the most underrated rookies in the NBA right now, and while Saddiq Bey rightfully gets a lot of the attention in Detroit, as Isaiah gets more and more minutes because he started off the season backing up Mason Plumlee and is still backing him up but getting more and more minutes lately, as the season progresses, you're going to realize that Isaiah Stewart is probably just as good as Saddiq Bey, or at the very least worthy of a decent amount of attention similar to Saddiq. So yeah, Isaiah Stewart, very good. Keldon Johnson of the San Antonio Spurs is someone I have talked about quite a bit because every time I watch a Spurs game, he is the guy who stands out to me. He is a very interesting player because his actual conventional skill is not as great as you might think, and gradually the season has gone along. His points per game numbers have decreased. It was at like 17 points per game over the first like 20 or so games, somewhere in that ballpark, and it's gradually got down to like 13. But Keldon is a really big guy for his size. I think he's like 6'5", but I swear to God, you'll watch him play and you think he's like 6'8", 6'9", and just a wall of muscle. His nickname, according to Basketball Reference, is Big Boy. So it's not just me who feels this way. He is a really well-built guard slash forward who is a pretty damn good finisher, creating off of the dribble, off of the catch, just driving straight to the basket. His three ball has not been as good over the entire season as you'd like it to be. There are really good peaks, but really low valleys, so it goes back and forth with his actual shooting ability. His ball handling is pretty good, but the thing about Keldon is, one, very good defensive player and potential to be one of the best in the league, and then two, he is one of the craziest energy guys that I've ever seen. Like, you know that meme of like Draymond Green makes a layup over a 6-foot guard and then he just screams and pounds his chest? That's pretty much Keldon Johnson on every play. It's not a coincidence that Keldon in the thumbnail is screaming, because I literally could not find a photo on Google Images of Keldon not screaming or moving in some way or another. There's no image that a photographer can get of Keldon where he is sitting completely still, and that's actually hilarious. So Keldon is screaming in the thumbnail, which I don't normally put in the thumbnail, because I could not find an image of him being chill for a second. So that energy, the effort he puts in the game, I assume he has a pretty high work ethic as a result. That guy absolutely wants it, and with him having great size and a decent jump shot, I think he can be very good. But what he actually becomes is something we're going to have to wait and see, because he has a lot of raw potential that I think he's going to deliver on, but we're going to have to actually wait and see how he does deliver on it. Now, you have probably heard of Kevin Porter Jr., but I want to put a focus on him regardless. Kevin, since joining the Rockets, has averaged 15 points and 6 assists on decent overall efficiency, although he has not been a good three-point shooter on pretty high volume. But the thing is, Kevin Porter's potential was already highlighted in Cleveland, and to get him for a second-round pick because of off-of-the-court stuff was definitely a steal by the Rockets. But the thing is, the biggest shock about Kevin Porter is that his playmaking ever since joining the Rockets is phenomenal. The 6 assists per game is not just some, like, someone has to get assists type situation. He has been legitimately a demon in the pick and roll as a playmaker. He's very good at spotting the open man. And then his ability to score. He is pretty, I don't know what the numbers say. I just know that his pull-up mid-range shot looks good. I would not be shocked if the numbers were actually not that good. But he's good attacking the basket, good at creating space off of the dribble. It's just sometimes the shots are not dropping. He has a very good step back, but the issue is the three ball doesn't actually drop when he goes to it. So actually getting shots to go in is really just the biggest hurdle for Kevin from here on out. But the fact that he's taken this leap as a very capable on-ball creator, already a good slasher, and then decent looks on his ability to create shots. As soon as those shots start dropping, which I think they will, Kevin is going to be a very, very good player. But those were just a few young players I wanted to put a spotlight on. That's it. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video. That is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.